Uh, Good day, Dr. Lee.
Hello, Professor.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm fine. Could you hear me? Could you hear
Yes, I
me,
can
please?
hear, yeah, I can hear
Okay.
you fine. I can't see your picture. You need to put your camera on, please.
Okay. Let me. Sorry. Let me. Is it
There
all
we
right?
go. Yeah, there.
Okay.
How you doing?
I'm fine.
You're a little off center there. I don't know if you want to be off center.
I'm a little nervous.
Oh, no, don't worry about it. There won't be a lot of people here.
Okay.
Don't worry about that.
Okay. If you want me to start, whenever you can call me.
Okay, yeah, you're gonna be first, okay?
Okay.
Probably start in about 10 minutes.
Okay. Fine.
Dr. Wan Lee. Do you know Wan Lee? He's
Yes.
one of the hosts. He's going to introduce you,
Okay.
hopefully, or I will if he's not here.
My pleasure.
He's what year are you? Are you a resident or attending?
I'm attending, but I'm still a PhD candidate at the same time.
Oh, really? Are you so you're a resident or attending and a PhD resident?
Yeah.
So you're attending.
Yes.
Okay, okay. There is a difference, as you know. So I that's right. You're in Beijing. That's right.
Yes, I'm in Beijing. And it's hopefully you are in the uh, morning, right?
Yeah,
9
it's
a.m.
12 hours
12.
behind China.
But this
Uh,
is the 8 p.m.
yeah,
and it's already night.
yeah. Sometimes it's 13 hours. It just changed back to 12. Uh, but Chinese easy for us because it's 12 hours. 12 hours. Opposite
Okay.
part of the day. It can be convenient. It can be uh, difficult, but we have to be. I have to be aware of it. Matter of fact, I made a mistake today
Yeah.
With Dr. Mario. I told him it was uh, the different time than I should have, an hour later. So, but that's why he's speaking second
Okay, I know
because
that.
yeah, because usually the Chinese speaker comes early, so that's good. I don't know if Ben's coming today, so he's been traveling a lot, speaking at different
Okay,
conferences.
that's okay. That's fine.
So Tien Tan Hospital is huge, right?
Yeah, that's huge.
How many they have a residency program there, right?
Right, yeah, there are residency
It
problems with thousands of beds in this hospital, and perhaps hundreds of residents. I don't know the accurate number.
oh really? Wow. Hundreds of the conferences must be huge. Do they have a grand rounds and conferences like that where
I'm
they
not
discuss
familiar with
cases?
I'm not familiar with that. If I have this information, I'll tell you, but I don't.
No, when you were a resident, did they have big grand rounds,
That's a long time. That's
case
a long time
present?
ago.
Oh, okay, case presentations and stuff. No,
Yes, that's right.
okay. Let me check with Ron Lee again.
Okay,
Excuse me a second.
okay.
Ooh, Wan Lee, are you coming in?
Professor Zhao. I mean, I call him.
Yeah, that's Wan Lee, right?
Yeah.
I love the Chinese names. They're nice and short.
That's right. And it's
Yeah.
easy to say it. Speak
Boy,
it is.
it must be hard for you guys. Oh man, it must be hard. There's so many Lees in China.
Li
Okay.
and Zhao is very popular names in China,
Yes, yes.
family names, and is almost the most frequently used family names, I guess.
Uh, I started to learn Chinese. It's very difficult language, very difficult. I think for me, I would have to be totally committed to learn it. It's, totally different alphabet. You have to really put a lot of effort into it.
I
A
guess
lot.
perhaps you are not in the environment if you come to China for traveling or
Yeah,
something, and
yeah.
you can learn very quickly. I guess so.
Well, I that's a good suggestion. That's how I learned Spanish.
Wow,
I
that's
went to
cool.
Mexico. Yeah, I went to Mexico. I learned so much quicker living there and having to speak the language and
Okay.
not taking the easy way and speaking English. Okay, hold on. I think I got a message here. Oh, Wan Lee, you're here. Okay, yeah, Wan Lee. Okay, Wan Lee. Oh, there he
Yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah. I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
good. Okay. Very
So
good.
you mean today we will have Dr. Lee as the first speaker.
Yeah, please, please.
Okay. So the second speaker it's from
Yeah,
Oxford, right?
exactly.
Dr.
Mario's coming. Yeah, I talked to him this morning.
Mario Ganal.
Right.
So he will be the second
Yes,
speaker,
yes,
right?
yes.
Okay. Sure. Okay. Wonderful.
I,
So we
I,
start. I'm not sure if Bing she will be here, but yeah.
okay.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Well, okay, if you can, that'd be nice.
Mm-hmm.
But that's okay. So we start in 5 minutes, okay?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. How have you been?
Uh, where's Bing? No, no, I don't know.
How have you been? You've been working a lot?
Oh, you mean? Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. And I just changed to a new hospital last October, so yeah, but that's okay.
Oh, okay. So you're not Tianjin, you're no longer in Beijing, Tianjin
I'm
Hospital.
still in Beijing, but that's another hospital. Yeah, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Smaller
I
hospital.
thought I told you before, but yeah,
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Forgot.
Maybe not.
Smaller hospital, smaller or
Actually, it's a good hospital, but with a smaller neurosurgical department.
okay. How many?
Yeah, Shenzhen, we have large neurosurgical department. Yeah, 500 beds. Now we only have
Well,
50 beds, but yeah, but the hospital is quite good. Yeah.
15. Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's okay. So yeah,
So
today
the residency is it 7 years, 6 years, 5 years?
what? The residency.
Yeah, residency. Yeah.
Actually, in China we don't have a very it's not a standard protocol for residency training in our hospital. So yeah, it's kind of different. Yeah, but in
Oh, okay.
different hospitals. But
Different
yeah,
structure.
generally it's similar as that in United States, but not always 7 years residency training program. But yeah, in some hospital, maybe especially small hospital, maybe once the medical school student graduates from medical school, they can be a resident in
Oh, okay.
But I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
different.
In this country, they have internship.
Yes.
That way you take every specialty. You take, you rotate through everything. Uh, medicine, obstetrics. You rotate the first year.
Yeah. So
But
in China, young student, they don't need to spend the first 4 year in college. They can just uh, 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 go into the medical school from high school. So that's different.
yeah.
Never mind. Yeah. I think it's almost 8.
Oh, okay, we can start. Okay, here we go. 10, 9. Oh, wait, let me make sure I have it set up right. Hold on.
Okay.
Sometimes I don't even put it on YouTube. I gotta put it on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. Yeah, okay. It's okay. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good morning. This is Dr. John Bennett broadcasting from sunny Miami. We have another Chinese Neurosurgical Journal webcast every Sunday at 8 o'clock China time. And we're graced with the presence of Wan Li, who's been moderating this ever since the beginning. Wan Li is a neurosurgeon. He just brought it to my attention. He changed hospitals. He used to be at the same hospital that Anki Lee was at, Beijing Tianjin Hospital. Okay, and I'll turn it over to Wan Li. Welcome, Wan Li.
Hi, thank you, John. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from all around the world. So today we have our regular bi-weekly Chinese Neurosurgical Journal webinar. So today we we also have 2 speakers, one from China and the other from University of Oxford and United Kingdom. So please allow me to introduce the first speaker, a young lady neurosurgeon from Beijing and Tiantan Hospital, Dr. Anqi Li. She will talk about abnormal intrahemispheric functional connectivity in brain arteriovenous malformation with epilepsy. So yeah, please, Doctor, you can start your talk.
Can you see my PPT? Thanks for Professor Zhao's introduction.
Sure. Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to make it presentation mode? There we go. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Excellent.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Anqi Li from Beijing Tiantan Hospital. It's a pleasure to be here and present our latest findings on intrahemispheric functional connectivity in AVM-related epilepsy. The study delves into the intricate relationship between brain AVMs and epilepsy, focusing on the alteration of functional networks within the affected hemispheres. My talk today will be in 6 parts, and this page is the contents. Our research was driven by the need to understand the neural mechanism underlying AVM-related epilepsy, despite the relatively high incidence and its significant impact on patient quality of life and healthcare costs. The exact pathogenesis of AVM-related epilepsy remains unclear. The right figure from a latest view shows a brief summary of the previously reported hypothesis. Over the past decade, advances in understanding epilepsy as a network disorder have shed light on the exploration of epileptogenic mechanisms. In terms of the functional connectomes, techniques including EEG, resting state fMRI, and MEG have been commonly used to record multimodal signals during ectal stage or interictal stage. Method utilized to analyze this data including functional connectivity analysis, which reflects the association between time series in different regions of interest or ROIs, and effective connectivity analysis, which refers to the causal interactions between neuron units of the brain network. These are studies utilizing functional connectivity analysis based on EEG, MRI, and MEG data. These analyses ultimately derive the FC matrix here, filled with covariances or correlations or z-values between ROIs. Graph theory further help us to set up a mathematical framework to model the pairwise communications between elements of a network and allow us to quantify these network patterns into metrics for further statistical analysis. A brain graph may be classified as either directed or undirected, based on whether the links between vertices carry directional information. Please look at here. Or as either weighted or binary based on whether the links between vertices can take different values. These are binary and these are weighted. Frequently used metrics including global measures and local measures, reflecting the efficiency and structure of information transmission. For example, in the left figure, we can see half nodes, which means nodes with a high nodal centrality. The degree centrality is defined as the numbers of nodes neighbors. And these are a list of measures in graph analysis. Generally speaking, the human brain network is expected to have a small word architecture, which has lower metabolic and wearing costs in connections. However, current researchers face unresolved questions. First, the correlation between lesion types and lesion generation remains unclear, with conflicting new views emerging. While some findings observe that distinct epileptogenic lesions share seizure onset patterns and suggested that different pathological substrates can affect similar networks or mechanisms, like Peruka's study showed in the right table. Recent studies with improved techniques, on the contrary, provided different opinions. As for AVM-related epilepsy, researchers have identified several special RSNs using the whole brain lesion network mapping. Secondly, whether the global network provides enough information is not clear, since the focal onset seizures originate within networks limited to one hemisphere. The intrahemispheric network may be able to reveal unique information about the brain networks of patients with focal epilepsy. Based on the background, the hypothesis of our study is in the epileptic AVMs would have different intrahemispheric brain networks compared to controls, which could be demonstrated using FC analysis with resting state fMRI data. The study recruited 24 adult patients with unruptured AVMs. We excluded patients, including with prior intervention for AVM before admitting to our institution, diffused or transhemispheric lesions, patients with other neurological or psychiatric disorders, and available pre-surgical MRI with poor quality. Of these patients, 12 experienced seizures and were diagnosed with epilepsy in accordance with the ILAE guidelines. The healthy controls and the temporal lobe epilepsy patients were collected from public datasets. MRI data were acquired using 3 Tesla scanner containing 2 sequences, T1WI and resting state fMRI. We used fMRI prep pipeline to pre-process MRI data, briefly involving head motion correction, slice time correction, registration, and spatial normalization to standard space. Noise components of motion, white matter, and CSF were removed using NALEN, together with temporal filter and spatial smoothing using a 4 mm FWHM isotropic Gaussian kernel. The FC analysis was conducted on a Python platform using the Harvard-Oxford Atlas for brain isolation. We employed group level of state-based network analysis and graph theory analysis to assess connectivity patterns. Statistical comparisons were made using students' t-test or Wilcoxon's rank sum test with control of covariances including age, sex, and lesion location. The results were adjusted for multiple comparisons via FDR correction. And this is a workflow of our study. Now let's move to the result part, and let me first briefly introduce key points. Our results indicate significant alterations in intrahemispheric FC patterns in brain AVMs. Notably, we identified specific nodes and RSNs for AVM-related epilepsy and distinct from those in TLEs, highlighting a unique epilepsy-related network in AVMs. Let's have a look at the PPT. Between AVMs and healthy controls, differences in FC strengths across multiple connections have been identified, suggesting the widespread change of FC networks associated with lesions. However, distinctions were not significant in AVM patients with and without seizures post-FDR correction. In the graph theory analysis, despite similar global efficiency and community measures across all groups, we found notable discrepancies in various network metrics. AVM patients demonstrate lower clustering coefficients in the supracochlear cortex, indicating reduced level of clustering between this visual network node and its neighbors. Meanwhile, temporal fusiform cortex in AVM patients have higher degrees, suggesting more extensive links to this limbic system node. Between AVM patients with and without seizures, the temporal pool shows distinct degrees. This node belongs to limbic system and has been frequently reported associated with TLE and medically intractable epilepsy. The temporal pool, or TP, is connected to 3 temporal gyri, while the 2 association fibers that terminate at the TP provide the connections to the prefrontal cortex and amygdala and hippocampus, and consequently associated with several functions, including memory. Whether the temporal pool associated with certain seizure type or involved in compensatory response to the chronic seizure activity needs to be evaluated using causal analysis, not FC analysis in larger patient populations. We will come early in our later research. Additionally, we use a hidden Markov model to evaluate the dynamic functional connectivity of AVM patients. The HMM model successfully identified 6 distinct brain states, each exhibiting unique temporal dynamics. The lower switching rate of S1 was identified associated with epileptic AVMs, combined with the fact that S1 had the lowest global efficiency among its states. We suggested that the AVM-related epilepsy has a dynamic tendency to frequently visit a state with poor efficiency for global information transforming, within one hemisphere. Furthermore, we compared FC strengths and graph theory metrics between patients with AVM-related epilepsy and temporal lobe epilepsy. In AVM-related epilepsy, we identified unique FC patterns involving the frontal, temporal, and occipital cortices within the visual, limbic, and control networks, different from those observed in TLEs. Different distribution of the degrees in cranial cortex, precentral gyrus, and supracochlear cortex have also been found. These patterns imply a distinct epilepsy-related network in AVM-related epilepsy, characterized by altered FCs, like the page above reflects, and decreased integration of nodes in the visual network, such as in the cunar cortex or in the supracochlear cortex. Previous studies reported reduced functional connectivity with visual networks and between frontal visual networks in patients with TLEs, and indicated that impairment in FCs was associated with impaired neuropsychological function. Although the causality with the lesion remains uncertain due to the limitation of the FC analysis, the lack of significant cognitive abnormalities in our patient cohort suggests that this alteration may be a compensatory response to the chronic seizure activity. In conclusion, our research highlights the vital role of the intrahemispheric FC in elucidating the mechanism of AVM-related epilepsy. We discovered distinct FC patterns in AVM patients compared to those with TLEs, especially in the visual network, control network, and limbic systems, suggesting a unique epileptogenic network. Our study has some limitations. The sample size of each cohort is relatively small, and the heterogeneity between our cohort and the public datasets brings inevitable bias, and we did not consider the influence of anti-epileptic medications. So moving forward, we aim to broaden our research by incorporating a larger, more diverse patient group with multimodal data. This expansion will help confirm our results and assess their applicability to varied populations. We are also planning to employ additional analytical techniques to create predictive models for patient outcomes. And ultimately, we intend to conduct longitudinal studies to investigate the impact of various treatments on FC networks in epilepsy. And that's the end. Thanks for listening.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Lee. So, are there any questions from audience? John, I saw there are two more audience. Yes. Actually, Dr. Lee, can you give us a little bit more detailed explanation about your finding, especially the connection between the MR image and the EEG signal for those patients? The AVM patient with epilepsy. Are there some special finding in your study? Like some abnormal signal coexist either on MR image and the EEG signal.
Okay, thanks for your question, Professor Zhao. In fact, it's our aim to combine the multimodal data, including the EEG and resting state fMRI. However, till now, we're still focusing on the analysis of one of this kind of data, I mean the fMRI data. And we are using the FC analysis. That this kind of analysis reflects the association, but did not review the causal relationship between our eyes, and is also the limitation of our studies. While the notable finding in our research is the different in the distribution of graph theory matrix within this, among these patient groups. Between the AVM groups with and without seizures, we find the temporal pole showed lower degrees in epilepsy AVMs, and this region was frequently reported associated with TLE and medically intractable epilepsy. And we get that the TP has have a very complex connection with regions like the prefrontal cortex and amygdala and hippocampus. And these differences in the distribution of degrees show that this point might play an important role in the epileptogenic mechanism in AVM patients. And the next notable finding in our research is when we compare the AVM-related epilepsy with TLEs, and we found different FC patterns involving multiple cortices, as well as the different distribution of degrees in the nodes within the visual network. The visual network has been reported to be associated with the TLEs. However, it has been not mentioned frequently in the reports about the AVM-related epilepsies. Thus, we think that the modularity of the networks between the visual network and the free frontal gyrus could be a distinct point to make the AVM-related epilepsy special from the other seizures. And that's my answer. Thank you.
That's kind of, yeah, very interesting. So do you mean that for the AVM patient, if the AVM niders are located on at the occipital lobe, I mean the vision center, and then the patient will have more possibility for seizure attack.
Yes. In the statistical analysis, we use the lesion location as the covariances, and we have already considered the control of the covariances, including this. So this conclusion was based on despite of the lesion location, and we can see that these distribution differences still exist.
Okay. So another question is about the bleeding. You know, as we know, the AVM has a tendency for rupture and cause the bleeding. So, are there any difference between the ruptured AVM and unruptured AVM with seizure attack on your I mean in your group? I'm not sure if you divide those patients into subgroup. I mean ruptured and unruptured.
Okay, thanks for this question. In this study, we did not recruited these patients with ruptured AVMs, and we only recruited patients with unruptured AVMs, partially because we consider that the epileptogenic mechanism underlying these two kinds of patients is different. And there's some reports have identified that the rupture itself could be a risk factor for epilepsy in AVM patients, and indicated that we have to analyze these two patient cohorts separately, and so we did this inclusion criteria in this study like this. But furthermore, we want to consider to add some patient with rupture AVMs into our patient cohort. I mean, a larger population.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, John, do you have any other comment? Oh, I saw Takashi, Dr. Takashi Kom. So
Yeah,
do you
Takashi.
any?
You know, Lee, I really couldn't add too much to the neurosurgical part of the discussion.
Yeah, I know. I mean, yeah, I thought
Yeah,
there's some audience.
Yeah, Takashi's here. Takashi's here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, Takashi, how you doing?
Yeah. Good morning. Good night. Good evening. Good evening. I'm working some night shift, but I can attend this meeting. So yeah, thank you for the great lecture, the AVM. So there will be some epileptogenic focus will be identified by the side of AVM. So that will be very interesting and fantastic. each lecture. So I was looking forward to learning from you. So the epidemiogenic system of the every structures. Thank you for the lecture.
Very good. So one of these days, Takashi and I are going to travel the world and go to neurosurgery societies and televise.
Everywhere.
Right, Takashi? Okay. Okay, very good. Anki Lee, thank you very much for your valuable time.
Thank you.
And our next speaker, we're awaiting now. He's on his way. Just hold on, Juan Lee.
Okay, so yes.
Just hold
Thank
on.
you again, Dr. Lee. So maybe I mean you mean we can maybe wait 10 like 10-15 minutes for the second speaker, right?
No, he's on his way now. He's on his way now.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, maybe we just have some rest, a short break, cup of coffee or tea, and then we
have a
wait
coffee
for the
break.
second
Yeah, let's
speaker.
have a coffee break.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lee.
Takashi, are you there?
I'm mute. I'm here. I'm here.
Things are going very well. Things are going very well.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had a chance to see the conference we had in Cairo. I think you came by, didn't you? Excellent. Sam put together a very good collection of neurosurgeons across the world.
Yeah.
It was a bet. I'm not saying it. He's the one that did it, but I'm saying it was the best of the year online. 2 days of really good conferences.
Oh, yes.
So that was excellent. But as far as the project, I'm trying to get Zoom to be used by the advertisers
Advertise.
to advertise their products. Like
Okay.
for example, after you do a webcast, thank you very much, Takashi, for your webcast. The webcast is now over, and now we have a vendor who sponsored the presentation to
Yeah.
show what he has. So give them a chance to show their product in a Zoom.
Yeah. Zoom, yes.
So we're trying that. We're trying that now. And I have a couple of sponsors. One's an
Okay.
operative microscope vendor from India. Here, hold on. I think Mario's trying to get in. Hold on. There he is.
Hello, everybody. I think you now
Hey,
can see me
Mario.
and
How
hear
you
me.
doing? Yeah, we can see and hear you good.
Amazing. Well, I tried to be here as fast as I could.
Yeah, thanks. I'm sorry to put you at the inconvenience.
No,
I
no
know
worries
that
at all.
IST changed times in India, but I had no idea that that
It's okay. It's okay.
CET closed early anyway. So
I have basically let me upload my slides and then I will be with you in a second.
Yeah, Mario, do you want to introduce yourself before you start your presentation?
Sure. So there will be a kind of a presentation already into my slides.
Biography. Okay,
So,
okay.
yeah,
All right, whatever you want to do, that's fine.
I'm going to upload that in a second. Here. So the talk that I'm going to give today is on traumatic brain injury and chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is a condition that is emerging more and more in the international literature and grabbing the attention of the scientific community as well as of the general public. And the reason for that is we seems to witness an epidemic of concussions. This is not really related to the fact that concussion is something new at all. The problem is that it was poorly recognized in the past. So in the presentation that I'm going to give today, I'm going to describe a little bit more all those aspects. And let me see if you can now. Can you perhaps see the initial slide?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Oops, it's gone.
Whoop. Yeah, it went to another slide.
Oh, no worries. Let me. Is it
That's
back?
good. That's good.
Okay. No.
Oop, it's going back.
Yeah, I know what happened.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Okay. So, yes, my name is Mario Gano. I'm a consultant neurosurgeon in Oxford, and I hold several governance roles in my trust, including governance lead and training program director, deputy training program director. And I'm the clinical lead for neurosurgery for the Southeast region of England. I'm going to present this talk, for which I do not have any relevant conflict of interest, with the aim of discussing the heterogeneity of TBIs, and as I say, provide a focus on concussion, explaining that we do not have currently an epidemic of concussion. On the other hand, we are now diagnosing it better than before, and that's the reason why it seems that concussion is everywhere. In reality, it was poorly diagnosed in the past. This will allow me to give some historical consideration on chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Again, a condition that we have been knowing for almost a century under different names. And this will give me the final, background to explain what are the current unmet needs of neurotrauma services in major trauma centers. So heterogeneity of TBIs. Usually when we describe TBI, we differentiate them between open and closed. They are two very different types of head injuries with obviously completely different mechanism and also different natural histories. Open brain injury obviously represent a neurosurgical emergency in which at the very least we need to explore the wound, make sure we do a washout, remove all the debris, and basically this is a kind of a damage control surgery because we know that there might be either a focal or diffuse brain injury with a high risk of infection, with a high risk of post-traumatic seizure. And this situation obviously represent a life-threatening condition in an immediate fashion. A close traumatic brain injury may or may not represent a life-threatening condition. And that's pretty clear when we consider that in the group of closed traumatic brain injury, we have mild TBIs that are part of the family, including also concussion. So what is really a concussion? Whenever we have a blow to the head, oftentimes with a period of loss of consciousness and with a negative CT scan, we can tell that a patient has sustained a traumatic brain injury, which has to be considered mild because at times of our assessment, most likely the GCS will be either 14 or 15. And because of the negative CT scan, there will be no neuroimaging basis to consider a focal traumatic injury. So an example of a penetrating brain injury is this one, as you can tell, a very long metallic rod which entered in the forehead and crossed all the way to the occipital pole, basically. And this patient was very lucky because there was no injury to major vessels. Eventually, the main issue for him was to deal with the risk of infection, either immediately after the injury or delayed one, including a risk of osteomyelitis, and managing the post-traumatic seizures. And the condition is very different from this one. And in this one, as you can tell, we have an MRI scan with only very small foci of injury. And this is a diffuse axonal injury. And those patients obviously have a completely different natural history. Oftentimes, this is a closed traumatic brain injury, and the patient requires a long period in intensive care unit. And at the very beginning, because of a low GCS, a prolonged period of orotracheal intubation might also be required. And the pathophysiology of diffuse axonal injury, as you can tell, is a disruption of the axons. So there is really something that we can track on MRI scan, particularly on DTI sequences. For this reason, a classification of diffuse axonal injury is purely a neuroradiological classification when you have a grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3, according to the correlation between imaging and histopathologic studies provided by Adams et al. Almost 25 years ago. On the other hand, we have concussion. As I say, concussion by definition has a negative neuroimaging. So CT scan should be completely unremarkable. And this is the very first challenge. Concussion is a condition that has a clinical diagnosis, but has no radiological correlation. And until here, everything is okay. However, when we go and look at the literature, particularly this article from Furlan et al. Is the Toronto team chaired by Professor Charles Tatter, who has been one of the greatest neurotraumatologists of all times. This group has looked into all the registered clinical trials on mild traumatic brain injury and concussion. And interestingly enough, out of all those studies that were captured, 225 interventional and 95 observational studies, most of them had a very different definition of concussion. So the definition of mild TBI and concussion differ widely among 109 studies. And the other were missing a definition at all. So this indicates obviously a knowledge gap. And the knowledge gap is related to the challenge that we had over so many years to clearly have a good understanding of what concussion is and why it is relevant. Having tried to address this knowledge gap, we are now seeing much more attention, not only by the scientific community, but also by the public. And this is the reason why, in many instances, all those sports that put players at risk of head injuries, or contact sports of various degree of risk, from American football and rugby, or combat sports, to soccer, which would be intermediate, to other conditions like volleyball or cycling, who have a lower degree of risk for concussion. Our contribution as my own team to concussion is that, whereas the study from Furlan et al. Was only looking at articles from the clinicaltrial.gov, which is an American-based repositories for clinical trial, accepting both national and international trials, but not capturing the entire spectrum of randomized controlled trials that are currently ongoing all over the world. So our contribution as the Oxford Global Neurosurgery Initiative was to look into other databases. So we look at the German clinical trial registry, the Japanese one, the South Korean, Brazilian, China, the Netherlands, Australia, the European Union, the African database, and eventually we captured, as you can see here, a number of studies in which we subclassified into interventional or not, and in those studies we could see that we had similar problems as in clinicaltrial.gov. So in the German trials, for instance, 67% of the studies had a clear definition of concussion. And this was a similar rate that we had in Japan. 100% rate of a clear definition of concussion in the Netherlands. 33% clear definition of concussion in the Chinese database. 80% overall in Europe, and no clear definition in a few of those databases. Brazil, for instance, the African PACTR database was not providing a clear definition of concussion. And so this tells us that, same in South Korea, this tells us that the perception of the critical relevance, clinical relevance of concussion is very heterogeneous all over the world. What is the historical consideration on chronic traumatic encephalopathy? If we look at this slide taken from PubMed, and we use the mesh term chronic traumatic encephalopathy, we can see that it appears all the publication on this condition started in 2010. And then between then and now, we had over 1,200 publications. This is not really correct, because if we go back in time, in the past, this condition was defined punch-drunk syndrome, a terminology that was there ever since the early years of the last century. And the name was eventually shifted from punch-drunk syndrome into dementia pugilistica in just around the war time, to eventually be surpassed by the current terminology, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which was provided by this professor of histopathology. Dr. Bennett Omalu was in fact involved in the post-mortem of Mike Webster, who was the very first American football player from the Pittsburgh Steelers to die at the age of 50 for an heart attack with a very a difficult past. Over the 10 years preceding his death, he had episode of psychological turmoil, physical abusiveness. He became homeless for a little while. So something certainly was wrong with him, but nobody could understand what was the cause. Dr. Benetomalu, on his post-mortem, identified tangles of tau proteins and provided a clear definition from a pathognomonic perspective of those lesions. The lesions that chronic traumatic encephalopathy patient presents are accumulation of abnormally phosphorylated tau proteins in neurons and astroglia. And this is particularly evident around small blood vessels at the depth of cortical sulci. What is the mechanism for this? Repeated concussion, repeated blows in the head over time leads to accumulation of those proteins. And accumulation of those proteins over decades and decades of concussion eventually lead to the development of various degrees of severity of a chronic traumatic encephalopathy. For this study from McKee et al. Is particularly important because provide a correlation between the distribution of those tangles of tau proteins and the severity from a histological perspective of CTE. And you can see it's clear this image is self-explanatory from stage 1 to stage 4, particularly in the temporal region, and as you can see at the level of the sulci. The life and studies of Dr. Bennett eventually gave rise to some a movie like Concussion, in which Will Smith was the main character and was representing all the struggles that Dr. Bennett, an immigrant from Nigeria, had to overcome to establish himself as a scientist in North America, and then the greatest breakthrough of his career with the definition of CTE. However, this is also telling us how much movies can influence the social debate. And in fact, these movies certainly contributed to the progressive fall in participation in contact sports. In the US, for instance, ever since 2006, we had a 17% decrease in participation, amateur participation to American football. And this survey data from Sport and Fitness Industry Association is really telling us why at this stage we have the impression that we are living in a concussion epidemic, which is not really the case. Unfortunately, the rate of concussion is pretty much the same over time. Actually is decreasing because we have better protection, better helmet, we have changed some of the rules of contact sports. So in a way, our kids are more protected now than they have ever been. However, the perception is what matters. And this leads me to explain why I believe that by looking a little into the issue of mild TBI, CTE, and how this has been portrayed to the general public, we can also understand a little better what are the unmet needs of neurotrauma services in major trauma centers. This is a publication from my team again, in which we had done a scoping review of the literature on this topic, and we had the participation of some international collaborators from the Neurotrauma Committee of the WFNS, Professor Kidborough, from the Global Neurotrauma Committee of the WFNS, Professor Tariq Khan. And we look at the protocols and guidelines and best practices for the management of TBI in neurotrauma services. And what we found is that there is a need to optimize the prognostication for those conditions and to create service provision that basically allows for a systematic review of global neurotrauma services around the world. And from my point of view, basically, I would like to say that this area, so prognostication and service provision, is really the one where we need more collaborative studies. But which framework should we consider in terms of prevention intervention? And I'm going to quote this book, Reducing the Burden of Injury. We have been talking about the burden of traumatic brain injury for a long time. We know that it represents one of the greatest cause of morbidity and mortality, not only in developed countries, but more importantly in low and middle income countries. This book gives me the opportunity to discuss 4 types of prevention intervention. The first one, intervention that can change individual behavior. And when I say so, basically we can see how the awareness about concussion has led to a decline in amatorial participation and changes of type of football. So we went from tackle football to flag football. This can be seen as a third intervention, modifying the physical environment or modifying the products of agent type 2. And for instance, the evolution of helmets and protection gear adopted in NFL, in NHL, and so on and so forth. And there are also some other interventions like modifying the social, cultural, and economic environment. Now, for this one, for instance, I would like to say that at the moment I do not have a clear answer. I cannot quote a clear example. However, for all those that have seen the Super Bowl this year, the commercial that attracted the most my attention was the one on the international players pathway, in which the NFL is trying to identifying young talents from all over the world in order to make the reach of the NFL really truly international. What I would like is to highlight how this is really giving me a sense of equality, because obviously it's great news if we can have equal chances distributed all over the world to participate in what potentially is the best sport worldwide. On the other hand, what was not appropriate to me was that in the commercial, which was shot in Central African countries, none of the kids were wearing any protection gear nor helmet. And so if we really want to make progresses from this point of view and ensure that our kids have equal access to American football, we should also provide equal chances to protect themselves from the risk of traumatic brain injury. And with this, I conclude. I would like to mention that at the moment, Professor Kiber and myself are running a special issue on traumatic brain injury and chronic traumatic encephalopathy for Medicina, MDPI group. And I'll be very glad to receive a submission, particularly from China and obviously from the rest of the world too. That's all from my side, John. But I would be happy to take some questions if there are any from the moderators.
Sure. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Mario. Let me get that off the screen there. Stop your screen sharing. Okay. Yeah, Takashi, you have any comments? Are you there, Takashi?
Thank you. I'm Dr. Takashi Kon from Showa University, Tokyo, Japan. Thank you for the great lecture. I'm also a sports doctor of the boxing, and I know about the concussion movies, and I know the Julian Bales, West Virginia University. I know chronic traumatic encephalopathy has about pathological classification is needed, but these days, so pathological verification is a little difficult, but
Very difficult.
MR image can find further, and functional MRI or high resolution MRI will solve the problem. So, do you have any new comments, new perspectives of the imaging of chronic traumatic encephalopathy? New
Yes,
type?
on the imaging, unfortunately, what I can say is that by the time we have neuroradiological changes, it might be already too late because they are usually picked up on stage 2,
Stage 2.
rarely on stage 1.
Uh-huh.
And why this is concerning? Because all the studies coming from the greatest group on CTE, which is the
CTE.
Harvard-Boston area, are demonstrating that basically the vast majority, 95% and over, of the brains that they receive as donation from former football player, from NFL player, all show varying degrees of CTE. So this is really telling us that it's so widespread and affects almost all players. What would be important from my point of view, and I believe this is where we are heading in the future. You all know that we had multiple studies on biomarkers like
Yes.
GFAP, but
GFAP.
S100, etc., etc. And
S100, yeah.
those biomarkers were meant to tell us which patient will have a positive or negative CT. And the research question behind this type of investigation was try and limit as much as possible the number of negative CT that we all have in our ED. And because any patient that comes to our attention with a traumatic brain injury, in order to minimize as much as possible the risk of missing on opportunity to treat bleeding, particularly extradural hematomas, which tend to present in a very similar fashion. You have a traumatic brain injury, a period of loss of consciousness, and then again a lucid period, which oftentimes might dramatically disappear with a fast deterioration of patient because of the volume pressure curve. So the patient continues to accumulate blood in an extradural hematoma. Nobody picks this up because functionally in the neurological exam will remain normal. But when the volume of the extradural hematoma becomes so big to create a brain herniation, at that point, sudden drop in GCS and it might be already too late for the patient. So in order to avoid this scenario, we have been basically scanning almost all patients that comes to ED with a traumatic brain injury. In turn, this has created a huge medical expense because we are basically doing CT scan in all patients, and only a fraction of those CT scan will be positive. So hence the research question, can we identify biomarkers to predict which patient will have a positive or negative CT scan? This obviously would not apply to concussion because we know that concussion will have a negative CT scan. So in the future, I believe that the best area of research for those with an interest in neurotraumatology like me will be the identification and then the calculation of sensitivity and specificity of salivary biomarkers meant to tell us which patient has sustained TBI or not. In England, we are working a lot on this. We have excellent leadership from Professor Hutchinson from Cambridge and Professor Belli from Birmingham. Professor Belli in particular has worked a lot on salivary biomarkers, particularly messenger RNA, which can tell us very, very early which patient might have sustained a concussion or not. And I believe, if I have to say, in the future, I would expect to have a biosignature, which is the combination of biomarkers meant to tell us which patient sustained a concussion and which not. And then high resolution functional MRI meant to tell us if there has been any problem in terms of concussion, because even in the absence of structural damage, the functional MRI will be able to tell whether there is any problem in processing ideas, which is a clinical aspect of concussion. So I hope that this answer address pretty much the question that you ask, and I believe that in the next 10 years, this is the direction that our neurotraumatology community will take.
So
Thank you.
biomarkers are basically being developed. They're not
Yes.
accepted totally. They're not accepted by
They are
medical
being
community.
tested. Yes, they are being tested. And that's why I say we need to really calculate the sensitivity and specificity. And only when we will have, accurate enough biomarkers for, commercial use, they will go beyond the clinical trials.
Well,
Thank you.
I'm speaking as an ex-athlete, and I'm familiar with when a player gets hit in the head in hockey, which I played, and the doctors had to examine them on the sidelines, and they did a basic neuro check, and the thing they really paid attention to was your mental status, of course. Do you know
Yes.
where you're at? Do you know what day it is? And if they didn't answer any of those, most doctors know that the patient shouldn't continue to play. At any rate, it was a very contentious issue about the studies of Dr. Bennett. The NFL did not want to accept them. They fought them in court, and you're familiar with the settlement of. They finally paid out 1.2 billion, which they're apportioning out, being very stingy. So it's a big business. I mean, this is big in sports.
It's super big, and super big for another reason, which I did not cover purposely in my presentation, which is the sudden death syndrome. The sudden death syndrome occurs to those that have not been kept out of the pitch following concussions. And particularly refers to the fact that if you have a repeated concussion over time, the second hit syndrome may present, and those patients might have, sudden worsening of their level of consciousness, and some might die. Extremely rare, but again, these represent a scenario that we should try and avoid at all cost. And this is the reason why both in the NFL, rugby union in the UK, they are all looking at trying and identify better protocols and put them in place so that the patient that sustain a concussion on the pitch is kept outside and is not allowed to return to play until medically cleared. And this is in order to reduce the chances that there might be a repeated concussion over a short period of time, hence the risk of sudden death.
Wow, that's so the thinking that could possibly be a connection in sudden death. The same type of studies that are being done for concussion could be used for.
Yes.
So actually, it's just a scenario, really, that the trauma is occurring. It's just a scenario. That's all. But see, any other questions, comments? Well, thanks a lot, Mario, for.
Look, it has been my really pleasure to be here for this Chinese webinar. Great respect for Bing Tzu and all our friends and colleagues in China.
Actually, Mario, I have a small
Please.
question. Do you think the EEG can be a good tool for evaluate the?
It would be an excellent tool.
An EEG?
I'm saying so. My wife, Dr. Prisco, she's a neurointensivist here in Oxford. She has created the very first continuous EEG service in an ICU in the UK, and is leading. She's leading on this on a European level for sure through the ESICM. The problem of EEG is that it is extremely difficult to have these on a pitch side, because differently from what would be a salivary biomarker, it requires positioning of all the electrodes, so it takes time. Certainly it's not something that would give you an immediate response. You need them to analyze. You may or not be lucky in identifying changes in EEG pattern. However, the potentiality that neurophysiology have in terms of identifying changes in cognition and in our ability to process idea, thinking, etc., in the first hours following a traumatic brain injury are exceptionally high. And from that point of view, EEG really has an edge over conventional imaging, certainly over CT scan, but also over structural MRI. So for sure, having EEG, having functional MRI, having salivary biomarkers will provide us with a number of tools to identify which of those patients are at risk, and then also to tell when those players can return to play safely. So what I'm expecting is that in the next 5 to 10 years, we will have a much better understanding of those very first hours following a concussion, and how to optimize the management of those players and avoid they become our patient.
I'm going to share the screen we're being simultaneously broadcast, Mario, in China, thanks to the efforts of Wan Li and other people. Medtion.com, it's the best site I've seen on the internet for neurosurgery. And I guess, Wan Li, they're changing to BrainMed. BrainMed is an iteration of Medtion. So that'll be covering it. Super. If you ever get a chance, Mario, look at the websites, medtion.com.
I've taken a snapshot that I can look later. And from my point of view, if you want to have me in some of the other webinars in the future, I will always be very, very happy to be with you. Okay.
Oh, great. Thank you very much, Mario, for everything.
Thank you.
My pleasure. I wish a good rest of the Sunday. I go back to my own call.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Wan Li.
Bye.
Thanks, Takashi. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye. Thank you.
Thank you.